All right, here we go. Day 26, our first day of week 6. We are focused on executive communication. You have put in a lot of work to get to this point. We don't want to drop the ball right before the end zone. We do not want the trip right before we hit the finish line. All right, so enough of those analogies, metaphors, whatever they are. Just a reminder, the first week we focused on our own empowerment, understanding motivations, accessibility, the definitions of value, increasing the probability of success through reliability and habits. We moved on to the next habit of translating those things for our team. Then the next habit of, okay, we're really optimizing our motivation and our accessibility and creating patterns that drive success. What should we point that at? Week 3, strategy, all about defining the targets. Week 4, you define the targets. You got everything else in place in terms of motivation and accessibility. You're ready to drive it. Now efficiently scale your execution so you can implement that strategy. Guess what? You nailed the strategy. You made it happen, and it's applicable to other parts of your business or applicable to your current part, but maybe even at a larger scale. That gives you more scope. So how do you package that up to give you access either directly or indirectly to those larger opportunities to exceed expectations against your targets, aligned to your aspirations, to create value from either the use of the things that you deliver or the experience of working with you. So now we don't want to drop the ball. We want to make sure that we communicate those things and we continue the value generation. So week 6, focusing on exceeding expectations through executive communications. We're going to talk about different forms of communication. We're going to talk about authenticity and risk-taking and getting burnt. It's going to happen. You're going to get burnt. Focusing on specific mediums like meetings, written and verbal communications, as well as presentations and emails. Today, forms of communication. They are in different types at an executive level, just like at any level. And within each medium, the medium can vary by objective. You can have specific objectives in each medium. We're going to talk about things to avoid, things to do, and also expecting to be uncomfortable. So the many types of meetings, the many types of communications, this is pretty straightforward. Meetings, you have written communication, verbal communication, presentations. Could it be presented? It could be read. There's different formats for presentations. Emails. Everybody uses emails. How can you use it strategically to develop your leadership plan? Communicating in real life and virtually. The pandemic has created a transformation and a shift to adoption of other types of communications, and there's some subtleties there to think about. So within any medium of communication that you're going to use, you need to be clear on your objective, right? If you're going to ask someone to invest their time in the meeting, what is the thing that you want to accomplish? So when you walk into that meeting, you have that target. You've got the target that you're going to motivate people towards, that you're going to make things more accessible to through facilitation in that circumstance. And ideally, we'll talk about it when we get to meetings, but you've communicated out the objective before the meetings happened. And why are you there? Are you there to consult? Are you there to inform? If you're there to show off at the highest of levels, that's usually frowned upon, and we'll get into that a little bit more. You're going to want some kind of outcome in the form of a decision or a recommendation in most cases. And when you're aligning to that objective and what you're there to do through the communication, can you provide the thought leadership? Do you have it backed in data? Are you prepared to deliver that communication to meet the objective of the communication? Things to do and to avoid. Excuse my French or excuse my language. Just know your shit. Like, show up. Just know it. Be prepared for whatever medium. Develop the skills for written communication. Develop the skills for presentations. Develop the skills for meetings, like facilitate the conversation. Facilitate through your communication the action that needs to happen. It had the most senior levels. You want to be that transformational leader, you have to have a viewpoint. There's no way around that. You've got to have a viewpoint. And if you're going to be an authority, you better have the data to back it up. And guess what? People are going to challenge the things that you say, especially when you put yourself out on a limb and you give your viewpoint and it's backed in data. Just expect it to be happen. Welcome it as an opportunity. Welcome it as an opportunity to consult the person towards your point of view, or maybe to get more data to refine your point of view. But also be direct. We talked about empathy and directness earlier on in the program. The same premise applies here. And if you can, like we talked about last week, when you're proposing something big and you make them think that it's their idea of doing it, it's also another great way when it comes to asking for a decision and giving a recommendation to make them think that it was their idea. So expecting to be uncomfortable. There's going to be times in executive communication that you're going to communicate in ways that make you feel awkward, but actually project confidence to others. So as an example, fillers, poise, and pauses. So things such as like, that's our brain just operating slower than our mouths. And those pauses and fillers actually sound more awkward than if you just stopped for a moment and thought before you spoke. It's actually calming to do that. And it will help with your leadership practice, just as an example. But the actual act of doing this can make you feel very awkward. So another thing is a variation in your voice. So modulating your pitch. Sometimes I'm horrible at this. There's sometimes, maybe you'll catch in some of these videos where maybe I did it early in the morning and I was tired and I didn't modulate my voice as much, or I didn't use hand gestures. You know, it's that body language. It engages and inspires. It helps with confidence. And we talked about some of those things in kind of hacking our motivation as well. You're also going to have to understand, like, communicating directly and in simplified ways. There's a ton of information. It's not like a data dump of information in these circumstances. How can you synthesize and simplify and bring meaning to all this information and communicate it in a way that's highly impactful? And sometimes in some of these communications and some meeting circumstances, it can feel a little bit robotic and maybe not like yourself, but sometimes you just have to show them that you know your stuff and that here's the data and here's the recommendation. You've got 7 minutes to get in, get out, get the next action. And sometimes you don't have the opportunity maybe to do some of the relationship building, but you still need to drive the authority and the thought leadership. Okay, so today's exercise, practice applying objectives to prior communications that you made where you didn't consciously consider an objective of the communication, and think about some of the do's and don'ts and maybe how you would have done your communications differently had you had the opportunity. Again, it's a good opportunity to reflect and to visualize for the future. All right, I will see you tomorrow when we start discussing things about risk-taking, authenticity, and getting burnt. See you then.